Hello, welcome to today's class. We are continuing to build our Instagram clone. A clone is basically, at least in software development terms, when you take an existing thing and essentially replicate it. For our purposes, just for learning purposes, we're not doing anything, we're not going to launch our own version of Instagram, as far as I know. We're just using it as, a real world example that someone might get you to make, or you might want to make yourself. I'm going to share my screen and we'll open up some code here. Okay. As a review, I'm going to see if I can pull up our Photoshop file that we've been using. Instagram, what's this right there? Okay, so I found this template online. It gives us everything we need. We're mostly using it as a reference, measuring pixels, getting colors, but because it is a Photoshop file and it has these layers, we can kind of like pull and turn on and off things that we want. I made one small change to this file. This used to say, I don't know, some phone company name, and I changed it to something more fun. Other than that, yeah, this was just free. I Googled free Instagram Photoshop file, something like that. And this came up and I downloaded it and here we are. Let's do a quick code review. But before we even look at code, let's look at where we're at. So I'm going to right click, reveal in Finder. Pulled up the wrong one, but I found them. And we can simply just open this right in Chrome. Now we've been designing this for mobile. So although this looks okay, it's not really what we're aiming towards because we're working on making an app. So in Chrome, you can go in your inspector. This works in Safari as well, as long as you turn on your debug tools. And we can click this little guy here. It gives us essentially how it would look on a phone. All it's doing really is just changing the size of your browser. Instead of back in the day making mobile sites, it was like you would just try and make your browser tiny and see how it looks, and then open up your phone and go to it. And it was an annoying process. Chrome added this, I don't know, quite a while ago, a few years ago, so that you can kind of see stuff. And there's some presets for like iPhone X. I can, look at the different iPhone sizes, Galaxy, whatever. You can also just make your own, because all it really is the, the size. I'm going to stick to the iPhone X because that's essentially what I have. Okay, so where we got off by the end of the last class is right here. We spent a lot of time on the header. We spent quite a bit of time on this little guy here, which isn't perfect yet because you'll see it kind of just scrolls all the way over. We would want to set its width dynamically, but it's still fine. We also put in the little circle. We played around for a bit trying to do the gradient, but it became in HTML and CSS more of a pain than I had anticipated. Trying to figure it out while streaming out to the internet is a tedious task. So we just decided to make it a consistent color for now. And this one doesn't have it because we have a different class to allow these to be reused. Then we did this little guy here, which we copy and pasted this guy, made it smaller, and put in the username and the location, as well as this little menu here that doesn't do anything, but there's an icon and it's great. And then we finished off just by throwing an image in, which that was probably the easiest part because all we did was include an image tag and make its width 100%, and it just worked. So if we were to go back to our Photoshop file, we'll see we're basically, and we're not doing the header, we're not doing the iPhone header because that's included on your phone. You don't have to design that. We're basically this way through for the most part. You'll notice there are some differences on the icons, and that's because we just chose to use Font Awesome and took their stock icons, which aren't necessarily as good. We could rip those out, and we might do that at some point to show how that can be applied for very exact icons. But for purposes of now, I'm happy with this. Okay, let's do a very quick code review. I'm not going to go over everything in detail because there is quite a lot. And we would, we're only doing an hour class today instead of the 2-hour mega class we did on Good Friday. So let's just do a quick review. I'm going to make this better for the viewers at home. And split down, just so we can kind of see both things. So yeah, our HTML, we had our, our basic opening HTML tag and gave it a title. We're including our CSS reset. We're including our Font Awesome package through their content delivery network, their CDN, and our own custom styles, which are in, these are in the appropriate folder, CSS, reset, and styles. We made our header, which is essentially everything from here to here. We decided to just break it into 3 columns, left, center, and right. And if we were to look here, we'll see they both are, they're all 30% width. However, we override the center one after to say, you know what, make that one 40. And 30 plus 30 plus 40 is 100. So we're taking up all the space. Yeah, so header, we had title, we styled that. We actually did a fun trick here where we still have the text, and this is good for search engines and bots. They know, okay, this title says Instagram, but we're actually indenting that text minus 9999 pixels. So it's like way over here somewhere. And text indent is a nice trick because it doesn't, when you do it, you're not affecting the structure of your document. So we're doing that to hide it, and then we're actually putting in a background image. And that was so that we could have this nice logo, which we ripped from that Photoshop file. The story list itself is essentially a bunch of these, what we call story list items, which have the image, and that is what we're styling to add that border on, to add like the nice little circle. And we have the usernames. And we added this extra class called gradient circle to some of the images. For instance, if I got rid of this one now on the second one, you'll see that this guy doesn't have it anymore. So this is nice, it's reusable, it's modular, all good in my books. So we have all those guys, and then we had our post list, which we've only put 1 post in so far, but it has a top, which has that avatar. And this was really just a copy and paste of one of the, eventually find it. I know I'm skipping through some stuff, but you can always rewatch the videos on YouTube. We're using position absolute, which allows it just to kind of position it somewhere without affecting the structure. So we're putting out a right of 7, which seemed to work well, top of 19, and that's 19 pixels relative to its parent. So this is its parent, the whole top, as you'll see, post top. So it's 19 pixels from here to here. And then yeah, all we did was throw in the post content, which we've stubbed out here. We haven't done anything. We might not even have to do anything, but it's still good practice to stub out all your CSS elements. And then we just said any image in there with the 100%. When we didn't have this with 100%, it just took the size of the image, which makes this very very wide and not workable. So that with 100% was a very important detail. If you have any questions, I have the chat open on my other monitor, so I will try and watch out for it, either in the QA or in the web chat. I'm not sure entirely the difference, but both I can see. Yeah, feel free to follow along. I am going through these at a slightly faster pace than when we started this course because we're kind of over the hump of learning the basics and really driving it in. So yeah, if you want to follow along, great. Try your best. Feel free to in the chat or whatever, if you want to give me your email address because you're interested in getting the source code. I had a few people do that on the last one, and I sent them a nice little zip file of where we were. I'm happy to do that, just so you can, if there's some weird mistake happening, you can compare the differences, because yeah, it's easy to make one little mistake. Like, I'm going to make one mistake right now. I'm going to go like that. Just got rid of one little guy. I'm curious what will happen. It didn't actually mess up that much. Change this, but it did change. It did screw some things up for sure. What if I got rid of a closing div? Look at that. One little thing and your whole site's just a mess. So it's very easy to, make those mistakes. There we go. Okay, let's continue on as planned. So we're here. So we get to do these little icons next. So what we're going to do is we're going to, similar to how we have a post top, we're going to make a, I'm not going to call it, I'm going to call it, you know what, we're going to make, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a whole container. I know I'm kind of just making this up as I go. We're going to make a whole container here called post bottom, so that we keep with our post top, post content, post bottom. And then within it, we're going to make a something for the action, something for the comments, and all all that jazz. So let's do it. I'm going to just open this guy up. Can I minimize this and keep this? Yeah. For now, just so we can kind of see all these things at once. This should work for me. Okay, and the pattern we're going to do is we're going to write chunks of HTML. So we're going to focus on basically this part first, make the HTML, and then go to the CSS. In real life, when I'm doing things, a lot of the time I actually write quite a lot. Like I might actually go through and write all the HTML for this whole screen and then do all the CSS. But I feel like in learning purposes, this makes more sense because it'll be by the time we finish all the HTML, if we were to do it that way, you might forget what the heck is going on. Okay, so where were we? I'm going to close. So I'm going to close. It's my long-winded way of saying I'm going to close the CSS file for now and just focus on the HTML. Okay, so we have post top. And something that's nice that VS Code does is you can sometimes click, it's not always perfect, but you can click the start of a div tag basically between that and there, and it'll kind of give you an idea of where the closing one is. So see how it's kind of highlighting here? That's helpful. So we know the top finish there. I know that post content finish is there. So we're going to make a new div. Let me try and learn how to type. This will be called post bottom. And within here, we're going to start by making this part here. So I'm going to call this, just to be semantic, post actions. Now, in VS Code, rather than writing out div class equals that, nice shorthand you can do is you can just write the period, meaning like a class, with the name of post actions, and it will, and then you hit tab and it will just complete it for you. And while we're on that note, that automatically makes a div by default. If you wanted to be like, for instance, an anchor tag, you could write a.test or whatever, and it will make a class, an a link with the class of test. And you can do that with virtually any tag, span.test, whatever. So that's just super helpful because writing, honestly, like the hardest thing about HTML is like, I feel like where the keys are for the Pac-Man characters, as I will call them from this point on, are a little bit awkward to get to. And anyways, so that's nice. We're good. Post actions. So within here, we are going to make a another. We're actually just going to put the icons right in. So I'm going to make a. And for icons, what we've been doing is using the I tag, which originally meant italic. That was many years ago changed to use EM for italics because really what you're doing is you're emphasizing it, and a lot of the time you'll style it to be an italic. So I has kind of been, it's this thing that still exists. Browsers understand it, but it doesn't necessarily, especially if you use reset, it's not going to make your text italic. So Font Awesome has kind of taken that I tag and be like, you know what, that's a good tag for us to use for icons because I is the first letter in icon. So if we give this a class of FA and then FA dash, I think heart, we will get the heart. Now, the you notice that in Instagram, and we could rip these icons if we wanted to completely make them direct, but we are going to run on Font Awesome. It's actually an outlined heart, and Font Awesome has a cool way of dealing with this, and hopefully we're using the right version of it that supports it. So bear with me if it doesn't. You can put, instead of FA for the first class, you can do FAO. Nope, that's not how you do it, or we're using the wrong one. Hang on. Heart Font Awesome. We're going to look it up. FA heart, there should be a way to FAS. Okay, yeah, spots to, oh, maybe this one doesn't support it, or maybe in the free one. Okay, never mind. We'll get to that another time, probably when we actually rip the real icon. So we're just going to make it, it's solid. Everyone's good. We're going to also do FA, and I'm going to guess these. I might be wrong, but probably FA comment. It might be FA bubble. It is FA comment. Great. And then we already have this one. So I'm going to go up and remember what we called it. Paper dash plain. And then the last one, which is kind of like the bookmark, FA bookmark, is probably what it is. There we go. We got all of our guys there. Everything's great. And I think that's all the HTML right now we actually need to make this look good. So let's make it look good. So I'm going to open up our CSS, and I'm going to go down here, And I am going to split these for a moment. In fact, yeah, this is probably fine. And we have a little more space because we're doing mobile, which is nice. So we can shift this out a bit. Shifty. Okay. So essentially, I'm going to make a new section called post bottom. And this is just a CSS comment, just for organization purposes and to leave yourself little notes. And we're going to say dot post bottom. And I don't think we have to style anything with this. Actually, yes, we do. Let's deal with, rather than putting margin on every single icon, it kind of makes sense just to put it on the object itself. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to do this thing that I always do and give it a background color of red. So right now that post bottom essentially is from here to here, anywhere where it's red. So what we're going to do is actually give it a padding top of, and I'm just going to guess these for now because I closed the main Photoshop window, but let's say that's 12 pixels. We'll go back here, looking good. And we're going to want the same padding on the bottom, more or less. You know what? I'm actually going to make it 8 and 8. And then there's also padding on the right and left. About this, you know, we're going to say it's the same. So I could write padding left 8, padding right, but because they're all the same, we can very simply just say padding 8 pixels, and we'll apply it to all of them. There we go, nice little spacing. Now there's just a little bit of a gap here, and I'm curious what that's about. It could just be that the image has some weird thing going on. In fact, that's probably what it is. I bet. Let's see if I can I open this image? Fun fact, let me zoom this a little bit. If we go and we looked at this a little bit, if we go to our network tab and change this to say images, we can actually see all the things that have been downloaded to our computer temporarily. So I'm going to double click on this. Yeah, there's no like, I was thinking maybe there was already white border on the bottom of that. I'm not quite sure where that is coming from. We're going to get to the bottom of it. Not that it really matters, because the only reason we can see it is because there's this red happening, but yeah, like, yeah, all right, we're not going to worry about it. Okay, so we've styled that. We can get rid of the red background and it will look great. Now, what we want to do is go, oh, you know what? I did style the wrong thing here. Post bottom, that's putting padding everywhere. Which may, you know what, that is the case because we want padding here for this whole thing. We want padding here. So we'll just keep that then. Okay, so that's good. The next thing we would be styling is dot post actions, which is the child inside of it. And there's nothing we have to do there yet. So let's just keep that stubbed out. But what we really want to style are the icons inside of it. So we're going to make its font size bigger. And I'm just going to kind of guess these for now. And that makes the icons bigger. Again, the font awesome icons are really just it's a font library. So yeah, you use font size. We don't give it a width and a height. We just say, 24 pixels. I'm going to try 20, 22 maybe. Yeah, we can measure that to get it exact, but they're not even the correct icons. So this is good enough. Okay, so we got these guys. Now the one thing is this icon is supposed to be all the way to the right. So we're going to do something new that we haven't done before. We could, just specifically target FA bookmark. We could go basically .fa bookmark and keep all these things the same. And let's do this first, and then I'll show you this fun trick. So what we want to do here is actually go, I think this would work. I don't know. No, that does not work. What do I want to do here? Like we could just handle this the same way we did this icon here, and I think that makes sense for now. It's not the way I would really do it in real life, because I would use something called Flexbox, which we've looked into a little bit but haven't used, because it is confusing, but it actually makes life amazing. So for now, we're just going to position this absolute, and we're going to go, we're going to give it a right position. Let's just see what 0 looks like. And there we go. Now that's obviously too much, because absolute positions, once you do that, it doesn't necessarily conform to your padding. So we have to account for that. We know that the padding was 8. So if we make it 8 pixels, it should go in the right spot. And that looks good. And we don't have to touch its top. It'll just keep its default, which is good. Something else, I feel like these icons could be more spread out. So let's just give all of our icons a margin right of like 6 pixels. That looks a little bit better. And now because we did a margin right of 6 here, it is also being applied here, meaning it got pushed 6 plus that 8. So really, we can set this to 2 to keep those the same. And that looks pretty good. So yeah, that's one way to do it. The problem I see here is what if, and for Instagram, it doesn't matter because we're copying it, but what if we ended up wanting to like reverse the order of these and put the paper plane right there? We would want the paper plane to be on the right side, but that's not going to happen because we've taken this out of the structure and said we're positioning it absolute. So basically, so what we'd have to do is actually then change paper plane, and we're kind of like changing things in multiple places. So I'm going to show you something really cool. Rather than doing it this way, I'm going to introduce you to a new pseudo selector. So the only pseudo selectors we've used so far is that lovely one called hover. And hover is, you can do things like change its color to red, for instance. And we'll see. Now, the problem is when we're looking at this on a mobile phone, there is no hover, so I can't even show it unless we go here, but we'll be able to see that on hover, they go red. So it's called a pseudo class because it's a class that kind of is only applied in when particular things are true, in which case, in this case, when you're hovering it. Another pseudo class you can do is called last child. And when we do that, we're essentially saying like the last child in this group of the things that we're selecting, we want to do something to it differently. And in this case, we're making it red. Now that's not actually what we want to do. So what I'm going to do is get rid of these. I'm going to delete this line, or I'll keep it there as a reference. I'll put it back to how we had it. So we have and then this one's being styled red because it's the last child. But what we really wanted to do is say the last child should be a position of absolute and right of 2. And that's awesome because now look, if we actually reordered these so that paper plane is last, it's automatically going to put your last one over there, which is essentially what we want. So that's the last child. There's also, you can do it with first child. You can actually do things for even and odd. There's a bunch of like things you can do with just pure CSS to target specific instances of things. So pseudo, just because I didn't really mention it, you denote a pseudo selector with a colon like this. So, normally we would do something like this. And this would work if we actually gave this a class of last child, but we don't want to do that. We want to just automatically do that and not have our HTML have to be updated. So there we go. We got our actions. It's looking good. Okay, what's next? Going here. Great. So we have, we need something that says how many likes our thing has. I can tell secretly now that whoever made this Photoshop file probably lives in Europe or something because they said 1.984, and that really means 1,984. They don't use, whoever did this does not use commas, they use dots in their numbers. Okay, so we need to do that. So still in post bottom, but outside of post actions, we're going to just make another thing called I'm going to call it like count, like counter. And we're just going to write in, I'm going to make it more than I'm familiar with, 1,984 likes. And if we were to refresh now, we're going to see that text looking good. So let's copy and paste this, throw it here and do .like counter. And the first thing is this like counter needs some padding on the top. And in fact, we don't need to use padding here. We can actually use margin. Doesn't really matter. And what we're going to do is make it the same padding that we have been using, 8 pixels, just to make stuff kind of feel natural. That seems okay. And in fact, I feel like it needs to be more. Let's make it 16. 12. We're going with 12. I'm just eyeballing this. Okay, the other thing is it seems to be a smaller font size, and I am going to open up my Photoshop again and put this back in. How do I do that? Okay, So they're using a font size of 28 points. Now this is a 2x Photoshop file, meaning it was designed twice the resolution that really we see it as. So we just have to do some simple math. 28 divided by 2, which is 14. And we can make its font size 14. And I think that's actually our default font, so that might not do anything. No, it's not. I guess our default font is something like 16. The other thing is it's bolded. There we go. Looking good. Okay, so that one was pretty easy. I don't think we have to do anything else there. I'm going to make another one called, what's our next piece we got to do? We'll just call this one description. And I'm going to write in username. I'm just gonna copy and paste this. Look at that. Description. And yeah, just made that. And there we go. And similar to what we just did, and in fact, I'm going to copy this whole thing. Get rid of the bold because we don't need that, but I think that will basically work. I copy and paste and did not change the name. Make sure you change the name. And then we get the description all there. Now the description has some fun little bonuses. For instance, we see some bold and we see, this blue and whatnot. So we need to, in order to do that, we do have to do some updates to the HTML that we just wrote. So what I'm going to do is put the username, I'm going to wrap it in a span tag. Spans are really helpful for this kind of thing because they're inline elements. They don't, putting this isn't going to drop it to a new line as if it was a div. So it's a nice way to essentially style things. And I'm going to give this span a class of username. And then we're also going to wrap a span around the hashtag, the whole hashtag and the word. And we'll give this a class of hashtag. Okay, so refreshing now, nothing changes because we haven't said what to do, but we can essentially go span and then give it a dot. Let's do username first. So a span with a class of username, we want its font weight to be bold. And there it is, it's bold. Let me zoom. Can I zoom this more? No, but it's there, it's bold. And then I'm going to copy this whole thing. And instead of that, we'll do this for a hashtag. And just to see if it works, our hashtag is bolded, but that's not actually what we want. We want its color to be different. And in this case, going to Photoshop, we will see that its color is this lovely code, which I've copied to my clipboard. Paste it in. Don't forget the number sign. Don't forget the number sign. And there we go. It now has that beautifulness that we've been striving for all day. Okay, we're almost through. Okay, so then we have this little guy here and this little thing here. I am going to use this as an opportunity to, because this is a perfect thing for Flexbox. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to show you guys Flexbox in a little more detail. So Flexbox is this new thing. It's not new anymore, but it's in the world of HTML CSS, it's definitely very new. I feel like browser support's, only been around for a couple of years for it. But it helps with a lot of things like positioning things in a row or column and making sure that things are centered no matter what's inside of it. So this is a perfect time for that. So we're going to make that HTML and we're going to call this, let me just minimize this guy again so we can see both. We're going to call this add comment. Yeah, let's just call it add comment. And then inside here, let's make the avatar. And inside the avatar, we're going to make an image with a source of, and I'm just going to pull one of our lovely place kittens. And we'll make it just a smaller one. This is going to be tiny. Okay, so we have an image, and then we also have a, and I'll just call this like comment CTA. CTA stands for call to action. Rather than writing out call to action, I think it's a good word to put here. And we're just going to write add a comment. ... Okay, if we looked at this now, we're going to see that it's getting there, but it's not great yet. So let's style it. So first of all, the post bottom dot add a comment. We definitely want to carry that margin over. So I'm going to stick with that 12 pixels we've been using. So now there's a little bit of space. We also want to style the avatar inside of it. Dot avatar. And let's give it a width of, I don't have my tool. Oh, this still shows me. Okay, that's great. So this looks like a height of, wait, is that right? Yeah, width of like 50. Yeah, 50, but because of the 2x, we're going to make it 25. And a height of 25 pixels. Now that's not actually going to do anything other than change the container, which makes this really messy because we have to tell the image to also have that width and height. So I'm going to go and make its, the avatar image tag width of 100%. And the height should automatically follow that. So there we got that guy there. Now it is a circle. Oh, I lost him. It is a circle. So we want to do our lovely border radius trick of 50%. And it actually did work, but we need to tell, because we're doing it on the parent, we also have to tell it to have an overflow of hidden so that anything outside of its bounds gets cut out. There we go, this little guy here. Is there a way to zoom this? Oh, yes, there is. Okay, I'm gonna make this bigger for you guys at home. There we go. So I'm just looking at it at 125% on the screen. So this is a lot better, I would say. So we've done that, and then that looks good. So let's style the actual call to action. Comment CTA. And I think there's only a couple things we need to do here. For one, it definitely has a different font size. And I need to, pull this guy up again. Oh wait, there it is. And we can see its font size is 24, so it's really 12 in our world. 12 pixels. And its color is going to be, we haven't used this color yet, I don't think. Photoshop, color, 9A, 9A, 9A. Don't forget the number sign. So now we got that. Okay, so we've got the styling of it. I want to show you how to do the layout here. So what I'm going to do, just for debug purposes, is let's give this a background color of yellow, something that is obviously for test purposes. So right now, this whole thing, because of the content within it, its height is whatever its content height ends up being, and its width, because it's a block element, it's just going to be the width of whatever can fit inside its container. So I'm going to keep that on for now. We're also going to, I'm going to go background. I won't do it for that because you won't be able to see it. But on the CTA, I'm just going to give this a background color of blue just to show this. So that element is like that. That one's right there. All good. So I'm going to show you Flex. Flex is sweet. Flexbox. So what we're going to do in the parent, which is this add comment, we're going to use display. And by default, it's display block. Divs are display block, but we're actually going to do display flex. When I refresh, you actually see automatically, oh, now things are right against each other. That's because flex elements essentially line up next to each other if you have it in its default state. So we've done that, and that's good. Now what I want to do, I'm going to make the other items also display flex. Doesn't change anything, but allows us to do some other stuff. Now, essentially what I want to do, this all looks good except for two things. One, we're going to want to push this box over. So that's something we can just simply do with margin left of, let's say 8 pixels. That'll just push it over. That's probably too much. Great. That looks fine. And then the text itself, we're going to use something called, and this is only valid if it's a display, sorry, I don't want to do it here. Back on my parent, what I'm going to do is, and I might do the wrong one first because I always forget. Let me just, before I explain it. Okay, that's not what we wanted, but basically you can do just on a flex element, you can say justify content, and it's going to justify, you can use center, for instance, that I'm doing right now, which will put all the stuff in the center. It's kind of like text align center, but works a little bit differently. Some other things you can do with justify content that are great is flex start. That's the default. So that puts it at the start of the flex. flex end, which is super helpful. And in fact, we may refactor this to make use of that. Flex end, that looks great. One that's really helpful is you can do space between, and that'll put an equal space. It'll basically put the things on the end if it's 2 elements with, and it'll just put space in between. There's also space around, which will put the same amount of space on both sides. So you'll see they're kind of like, this is here, and it's essentially adding in spacing on this. So that's nice. There's probably a couple others, but we're gonna go back to flex start and just put it as is. And I'll keep that in there. It's not actually necessary because that is the default. When you turn it off, nothing changes, but I'll keep it in there just so we kind of have it for purposes. The other thing we can do is align items, and I'm gonna do center. And what's actually happening when I do that is it's centering it along, top to bottom. So flex, when you have it set to in its default ways, justify is like your left to right positioning, and align is your top, top to bottom. So that's great. That's actually something that if we weren't using Flexbox is actually a huge pain in the ass to do. So then look, it's nice and centered. It looks great. I'm happy with it. Okay. Let's go back to our Photoshop file. That was our quick little flex detour. There'll be more at some point. Okay, then we just have time in the translation thing. So I'm going to, rather than calling it time or calling it translation, because they're kind of doing both, we're just going to call it metadata or something like that. .metadata. And we're going to put a span in here for 5 minutes ago. Now notice this is in caps. I'm still keeping the HTML in more of a standard case. That's just good practice, because in the future you might decide, oh, we don't want to caps that, and you'd have to go through and change all your HTML. Versus we can use CSS just to say, you know what, no matter what case I'm writing, make it uppercase, make it lowercase, that kind of thing. So I always do that. I'd never in HTML ever write stuff in caps, which can be annoying because then a client will send you like back, change it to this copy, and it's all in caps, and you gotta then like, if you're trying to stay true to yourself, you gotta like, make it small and all that stuff, and then paste it in. But anyways, let's make another span with a that says C translation. So yeah, try and keep it, as if it wasn't, how would this look if we weren't uppercasing it? I'd probably, in this case, use, capitals on these. So class, and we'll give this a class of meta data time and meta /data translation. Okay, so our page bottom, post bottom, sorry, dot metadata. Let me see if I can. Oh yeah, I can. Okay, great. I'll move this up a bit for you guys. Let's give this the same thing, margin top of 12, just to space stuff out nicely. And I think that's all we need to do there. Actually, no, we can do other stuff. We can set its font size, because both these elements have the same font size. It is 20, so we're going to do 10. Getting real small now. And that's fine. So if we were to reload, we would see these guys right here. We also know that they need to be text transform uppercase. 5 minutes ago, see translation. Okay. Now there's some color differences between these things. So let's specifically do a span with a class of metadata time. And what do we got? I think this one's actually fine. We don't have to do anything for that, but I'll keep it in there. Metadata translation. So this one has, oh wait, I was wrong. There is something here. This has a color. I'm assuming it's the same color as the add a comment, so we'll just assume that. Whereas this one has the default color, so we don't have to write color. It's just using our almost black. But it seems to have some boldness to it, so we'll make it bold. And we're getting closer now. The only thing I would suggest is we need some spacing between here. So on this one specifically, we can just give it a margin left of 12 pixels just to kind of space it out. And I feel like that seems pretty good. Okay, that's it for our post, for this post. We got time, so let's do the tab bar. And we're gonna use Flexbox to, because this is also another perfect time to use Flexbox. And I love Flexbox. Everything looks good though. Boom, boom, boom. We got our icons, we got this guy, we have Instagram. Okay, so I'm going to actually go down here and so we did our header right in the root of the body, which makes sense. We also want to make sure our footer is right in the root of the body because it shouldn't be part of the post content, right? It needs to be something that exists outside the post. So we're doing it at the highest level we can. So we're going to make a div with a class of, I'm going to call it tab bar, tab dash bar, tab bar. Is tab bar one word? Probably not. No. So we'll do tab dash bar. Remember, don't use spaces in your class names. Does not work. You can have multiple classes by using a space, but your class name itself cannot have a space. Tab dash bar. And in here, we are going to make a div with a class of tab bar item. And in fact, let me just look at these. Home. Yeah, that should be good. And inside here, we're going to use our lovely I tag with a class of FA and FA dash, home is probably what it is. And I'm going to copy and paste these 4 more times. So home, I'm trying these. I'm going to have to look them up. I'm going to make this one say plus. We know heart is one, and I'm going to make this one user. Let's see. I think I got maybe 4 out of the 5 correct. Oh my gosh, everyone. I got all 5 of them figured it out. Okay, we're good. Okay, so what we're going to do is style the tab bar now. This is all the HTML we need until we want to actually make them interactive. So we're going to keep it as is. But rather than starting the tab bar down here, which might make sense, to me, it's a global element. It exists on every page. So we're actually going to go way back to our top and see where we finish up the header. And we're going to make a new section called tab bar or footer. Now, let's just give this a background color. Oops, so dot tab bar, background color. I'm just going to make it yellow for now, just to see where it is. So right now it's massive, it's huge. The thing about the tab bar is it should not be that huge. It's only going to be this. And the only reason it's that tall is because these things are stacked. So we're going to use Flexbox again. And I'm just going to do for now display flex. And now they all go in a line. That's great. And what we can do now is do justify content. This is a perfect time, I believe, to use space around, but I could be wrong. Yep, that looks pretty good. So now they're all spaced evenly, which is nice. We also want to make sure we have some padding. I only want padding on the top, so I could do padding top, 12 pixels, padding bottom, 12 pixels, and that will, add some space, and that looks pretty nice. But we can make this a little more shorter by just doing, this is a fun trick. You can, if you only want to style the top and bottom in an even way, but not do the left and right, you can do 12 pixels and then just do a 0 after. That's essentially saying style the top at 12, style the right at 0, style the bottom at 12, and style the left at 0. It's the exact same thing as doing this. So that is the same as that. There we go. Let's get rid of that yellow. So we're going to grab our little eyedropper here. We're going to pull this guy and we're going to change it to that color. Good. And then there's this little border on the top of it. It's just going to be hard for me to pick, but we'll get it. There he is. I'm sure we've used this color already. So on our tab bar, we also want to do border top 1 pixel, solid, and paste in that color. There we go. Now it looks a little bit thick, and that's just because I'm zooming at it. Here. Yeah, 1 pixel. And yeah, if we did go back to 100%, you'll see it looks a little bit thinner. Okay, looking good. All right, the one other thing we want to do is right now the tab bar just is coming into place where you would expect it, right after the content ends. But in an app, the tab bar is always stuck to the bottom. So we actually want to make this position fixed. And we want to tell its bottom to be 0. And we can just tell its left to be 0 as well. And that's pretty good. Now, what happened? Why is it all squished together? That's because when you do a fixed position instead of relative, it no longer goes 100% width by default, like a block element would. So we also have to tell it width 100%. There we go. Now it's stuck to the bottom, and this is really cool because you can't tell now, but if we were to copy and paste, and I'm going to try and find our post list. So post list starts here. If I click here, I can see where it ends. And I'm actually going to copy and paste a few posts. And what you can see is the tab bar actually stays fixed the whole time. But what happened to the header? Oh, okay, we have this we have an issue. The header's going, and I think we know how to fix it, right? We want to also position fix it. Position fixed, and I actually usually do my position at the top of my declaration, so it's usually a pretty important one. You don't want it to get lost. So we can do position fixed, and we can tell it to have a top of 0 and a left of 0, and we need to again tell it to have a width of 100%, otherwise it will just get all crushed. And that almost worked. What's happening here? Let me just go. Sometimes weird things. Why is the width? Why is the width? Width 100%. Let me just turn that off for a sec. Wow. Okay, I think what's happening is, I don't know what's happening. Why is the width? Position fixer. Oh, yeah, right. We have, so we did 100%, but because we have padding, no, that's, yeah, because we're giving a padding of 12 on the left and right here, that's why it's sticking out. So let me just turn that off just to show. So now it's fitting in as we wanted. Okay, the reason for this is if we go back to something called the box model that we talked about, padding and margin and all those things get applied. Like you have the width of the content, then that other stuff gets applied after. So we would essentially have to calculate what this width should be. And the problem with percents, you can't, we don't know the size of our user screen in CSS. So we can't simply just be like, well, we want it to be 300 pixels wide because we don't know what that is. So I'm going to show you two different ways we can handle this. One is we can use one of CSS's very, CSS doesn't have very many things like this, but they do have there's a little bit of functionality you can write. It's called the calc function. So you can actually write a calc 100% and then do a little calculation in here. So I want to actually subtract 24 pixels. The reason for that is I know there's 12 on the left, and I know there's 12 on the right. I think, there we go. So basically I'm saying I want it to be 100% wide, but I want to subtract 24 from whatever that is. And that'll work, if we make it bigger, we make it smaller. So that's the calc function. It works fine. However, there is one other way to combat this. There's this new property. It's not new. I say new, but it is new because HTML and CSS moves very, very fucking slow. This YouTube video is no longer appropriate for children. So what we can do is we can actually say box sizing border box. And I'm just going to get rid of this commented out and set its width back to 100%. And if we go, we'll see it's actually perfect now. What box sizing border box does, and in fact, I usually just have this set to all my elements by default, but I don't want to confuse people. But for this, it's a perfect time to do it. Basically, border box kind of like takes the box model, which is confusing and annoying to work with, and makes you require writing these calc functions and reshifts the way it works. So when you are giving something a width and then you're telling it to have padding and margin, it's accounting for all that together. So box sizing border box allows us to still say 100% width, even when we have padding, because it accounts for the padding before it actually calculates where it should show on the screen. So we're going to keep that box sizing border box, and everything is great. So the header is following us. The footer is stuck. Now, you probably notice this is the top of my page right now, and I can't see everything. So the problem is, as soon as we made this fixed position, and you'll actually see it's happening on the bottom too, a little less noticeable, but there should be more content. What's happening is our header is now, because it's fixed, it's just stuck there. It's not affecting the structure of our DOM. So what we need to do is account for that. And what we can do is actually just write on our, because we know we're going to have this on every page, we can actually on the body just give it a padding top of, I'm just going to do something really big to make sure this works. 60 pixels. That was actually probably almost the right number. So all we really did is on the body, telling it we want a padding on the top of 60. It's probably more like 54. That looks right. And that now is essentially, if you were to look behind this thing, which we can do just by in your inspector, there's a fun trick. You can push the H key on any element and it will hide that element. So what's actually happening here is the body itself, the blue is where it actually starts. The green is the padding that we've added. So that's that 54 pixels, meaning the content doesn't start right away. Oops, I didn't mean to hide that. I just refreshed. So that's fine. Oh, look, there's a weird thing happening there. We're gonna fix that too. Yeah, stuff's going above. Interesting. We also want padding on the bottom, probably similar, maybe not as big. Let's just do padding bottom of, let's try 48 pixels. Refresh, and now, yeah, that looks a little bit better. Okay, so we kind of that. Now, one thing that's happening is this guy's going on top of that. That's so weird. So let me introduce you to something called Z-index. So I'm curious, is he going under the footer too or not? No. So there's a property called Z-index, and that's essentially telling it, you know, we've mostly been dealing with things in really in two-dimensional space. We're like left, right, top, bottom, those kind of things. But we haven't really been doing anything in layers. By default, things, if you are overlaying them, they will go in the order that they are declared. But what we can do is say, let's have a Z-index of something. So I'm gonna give the header a Z-index of 10. And essentially what that's doing is it's taking it, it's putting it above other things. So the default Z-index, I think, is 1. So it's going, now we're saying it's 10, meaning it's gonna be over top of anything unless we decide something else should be higher. So think of that as like, you know, if you use Photoshop, that's like how high it is on the layers. So Z-index 10. I'm gonna do the same to the footer. It doesn't seem to be a problem, but you never know. Oh, right, my footer is right here, tab bar, Z-index 10, just so that issue doesn't crop up again. The one thing I just noticed is our icons of our tab bar are a little bit small. So let's just do .tab bar I, and give it a font size of maybe 20 pixels. And there we go. Now I know Instagram they are using these outlines and they do this solid fill, and that's all good. We're not gonna worry about that now because we would want to rip these icons and whatever. So I think this is completely fine and we're in a good spot. Okay. Yeah, this looks great. And I think it's perfect because we're running out of time. I just want to make sure nothing was missed. Obviously, we didn't do anything with this guy yet. That will come at a later time. We still haven't, we got what, 4 minutes? No, we're not going to do it now. We haven't done anything for the live, you know, adding a live indicator here. Obviously, none of our buttons or anything do anything. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I'd say our next steps on this is going to be, we could, you know, if I was looking at this, our next logical step to make this a perfect clone would probably be to actually go and strip the icons out of that Photoshop file, or find a, you know, another icon library that's a little bit closer so we can get the nice outlines on things. But that's probably what we'll do next, is actually strip some stuff out. But I feel like the value in doing that, it's, you know, stripping icons is kind of time consuming and a pain. So more likely than not, and I will give this some thought over the next 23 hours, but we will probably just work on another page. So for instance, what else do we have? What other pages do we have? That could be a contender. We've already done that, most of that at least. So yeah, I think we would probably, oh yeah, this is the thing. This tells us all the things that are in this file. So let me just zoom in. Yeah, we could knock out another page like this in the next class. We could also, there's, you know, we didn't really deal with the idea of, you know, multiple images, but I think that's not really the next priority. Yeah, I think next class for sure. We're probably just going to build the profile page, because part of doing that is also going to be, oh, how do we, you know, navigate between pages in this. So I'm going to leave it there. Anyone, if you send me an email or write in the chat now if you want, with your email address, if you are interested in me sending you the code as it stands now, just so you can kind of use it for reference. But yeah, I think I think the code's pretty solid, and I think we learned a few things, and we got to play around with what was new today. We did Fluxbox a bit, which we're going to use more and more, and eventually that's going to replace anytime we're doing floating or even absolute positioning, we won't need anymore. We also learned about that exciting pseudo selector called last child, so that we can target whatever the last item in a list of things are to do something differently, which is how this gets over there. Other than that, yeah, I don't think there's too many other new things. But yeah, all right, hit me up. I'll keep stop sharing my screen, stop sharing the screen. Awesome. I'll keep, I'm going to sign out, but I'll keep this open just for a couple more minutes in case people want to hit me up in the chat with their email or anything. So I'll still be here just because as soon as I close it, I think our communication will be done. So hit me up if you have anything, but thanks for joining. We're doing this at the same time every day this week. So 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time till Friday, 2 and including Friday. And by then we'll, have a lot more stuff in this. So thanks for joining. Talk soon.